I'm going to make a prediction, man. It's going to be a good game Sunday. We're going to talk about all of that here on the Friday edition of Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Couldn't have said that better myself. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch them or listen to them, make sure you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode of Locked On NFL, which today is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Hello to my everydayers. Glad you guys could join me. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're running solo today, man. It's Friday before the Super Bowl. Matt is obviously tied up and he's busy. He's got a lot of things going on. So we're just going to pump this show out today by ourselves. Non-playoff teams who can flip it in 25 and end up in the Super Bowl. And at the end of the third segment, I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win. And not, I'm going to go even a little step further than that. I'm going to tell you why. Best destination for Myles Garrett, in my opinion. We've heard a lot. We've been talking about it all week here on Locked On NFL. They've been talking about it on just about every podcast in the entire world because everyone, all 31 teams, and I jokingly say 32 teams need to be thinking about Myles because, and that includes Cleveland. They need to be doing whatever they can to try to keep him. He's just that good of a player. But we will point out one or two spots that I think are good destinations. And I'll mention something about Cooper Kupp there too, because I think we need to make sure that there's a team being left out of there I think would be good for Cooper Kupp. But we're going to start at the very top with Super Bowl 59 and the keys to victory. I'm going to play one clip here by my man Louis DiBiase up at Locked On Eagles because it really, really resonates with me. Now, I had Chris Clark on yesterday's show from Locked On Chiefs, and you heard his spill. They ain't worried about nothing in Kansas City. Kansas City, they believe this is just their game. They're going to do what they do. So I'm going to listen a little bit, and I'm going to come back and tell you what I agree with about what he said. We'll add a little bit to it, and then something that I actually heard about right before I started recording. Check this out.
You're going to get a lot of one-on-one looks for A.J. Brown, for Devontae Smith, for Dallas Goedert, heck, even a Jahan Dotson, who I think, hey, if his number's called, and it rarely is, but if his number's called like it was for Quez Watkins in a big spot on a deep ball down the middle of the field in the fourth quarter, unlike Quez Watkins, I think Dotson's going to catch that ball. I think he's going to be much more like Torrey Smith in Super Bowl 52. Torrey Smith, his number wasn't called a lot in the NFC title in the Super Bowl, but when it was, the flea flicker, the helmet catch on third down, he made a couple other big plays in that game. Torrey Smith came through. Quez Watkins did not. I think Dotson can be your Torrey Smith.
All right, so he's talking about 2017, obviously, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. This year's different. This year's different for a lot of reasons. One, this Chiefs team is a little bit different. I don't think they're as explosive offensively. I think they got better at it towards the end of the year. But even last year's Chiefs team, I don't think they scored a lot of points. It just didn't feel like they were the same team without Tyreek Hill. But they won 2 straight Super Bowls. So they're doing something right? And what that is their ability to be able to adjust in-game and to just persevere and allow their DNA, their championship DNA, to take over. But I do agree with Louis about something. And that thing is this. Here's what I agree with Louis about. I don't see a weakness on Philly's team. I mean, the only weakness everyone keeps talking about is Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback in this league, right? I don't see a weakness. I think Kellen Moore, who, from a coaching standpoint, is the least acclaimed coach of all of these guys because all of the other people here have won Super Bowls, at least from a coordinator standpoint. That's what I mean. Did Fangio get one? I don't think Fangio has one either, but he's thought of and held in a very, very high regard from a career standpoint. And Kellen Moore, who everyone anticipates is going to be the brand new coach for the New Orleans Saints once the Super Bowl ends, has done a really, really good job. And we see a lot of young coaches around the league getting hired and being the new blood of the NFL. So I don't think that's going to play too much into it either, because he's got that big offensive line. He's got two really, really good alpha receivers. He has a great tight end. And of course, he has Saquon Barkley. So there's just a lot to work with there. It's almost like, yeah, you can do some things differently than they did last year, of course, with Saquon, but he is really just getting out of the way more than anything else. It's like with Philly, I know who's going to do something. With the Chiefs, I think I know who's going to do it, right? I don't know if it's going to be Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. I don't, Kelsey's going to get his shots. I don't know if it's going to be Worthy, the rookie, or if you're going to see Juju Smith-Schuster step up like it seems like he always does in these playoff situations. But that's the little bit of doubt that I have. Now, I do believe in Chris Jones, and I do believe in Trent McDuffie, and I do believe in Leo Chenal and the rest of their linebackers. Those guys, Carl Aftis, who I didn't like him in the draft, and he's proven me wrong. A lot of those players are really, really good, and they play well together, and they have a great coach. It's just that I can poke holes in it a little bit where I can't poke holes in Philly. Now, the other part of this is there's something to being that team that just knows how to win. Being that team in a close game that figures how to figure it out all the time. And I think that's the one thing that the Kansas City Chiefs do have an advantage of. The game being indoors, I don't know if there's an advantage either way or the other. I would suspect that probably favors Philly a little bit. And the Chiefs don't have that, they're not going to have the home field advantage. It seems like every year, with the exception of last year when they had to go to Baltimore, they always have that home field advantage. So I'm looking forward to a really, 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 really good game. I'm going to give you my pick for that game, and I'm going to tell you how I think it's going to happen. Does the fact that right before I started recording, I found out that those guys, Philly, they've had a little bug going through, and it happened before they went to New Orleans, by the way. They had a little bug. I don't know if it's a flu. I don't know if it's some kind of virus. I don't know if it's something, but a lot of guys have been down. Now, they have said that, people aren't going to miss the game. Nobody's sick enough to the point where they won't play. But at this point, man, every little thing matters. Every little advantage that you can have, every little bit of extra work, every little bit of energy that another team is not spending trying to get a dude off the throne, if he's sick, and the mental part of having to worry about and deal with that. I think that stuff is really, really important, and I don't poo-poo it, and I don't sit here and say, well, it ain't no big deal because everybody's going to play. No, I think at this time of year, every little thing matters, but it's not going to change how I feel about the game, because I do think they have a couple of days to get everybody together, get whatever in their system they need to get into their system, and flush out whatever's in there. So I'm not going to allow that to change my mind about how I'm going to give you a little bit of game dictation of how I think this is going to go. All right, we'll discuss that and more. There's been another story all week. Myles Garrett, after all the dust has settled, I'm going to finally settle on where I think a good spot for him and Cooper Kupp, the two names that are really, really out there more than any others in the NFL. I'm going to tell you where I think they should go and how it should go. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by BetterHelp. That's right. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid, but what if we focus more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships? Those are green flags. I like that. If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a relationship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. I love spending time with my family. I love spending time with my grandson, my wife, and all of my grown kids, because those are the things to me that are very, very fulfilling, and I don't feel like I'm validating myself. But therapy helped me get there. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch, therapist. You can do that at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Rolling on through here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On NFL PM podcast. That's right, coming at you in mid-afternoon here in the barbershop. Get back to the Super Bowl and make my prediction in just a second, but two names that this time of year you normally don't hear trade stuff, but you heard it now. You heard it from Miles Garrett, one of the 5 best players in the National Football League and maybe the best defensive player or one of the 2 or 3 best defensive players in the National Football League. And Cooper Kupp, a guy who just about 2 or 3 years ago, people were saying, well, he was the best wide receiver in the league. He's had some injuries. One is Miles asked for a trade. Cooper Kupp has been informed that they're going to seek a trade. So I'm going to tell you where I think those guys should end up. But first, here's some talk from the Squad Show and Kevin Ostracker about Myles Garrett.
He used the GM's own saying, Cleveland to Canton, against him in his statement. To me, that kind of indicates that this is not about money. What are your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. And usually when we do see situations like this, I mean, I went through this a couple of years ago over on Locked On Ravens with Lamar Jackson, where Lamar ended up putting a trade request on social media. Obviously, that was due to a contract. And we see a lot of these situations where it's like, okay, I'm going to use this as leverage so that I can get more money from a team. This clearly is not the motivation here for Myles Garrett. And with this coming out and everything of that sort, it's almost like with Cleveland, well, now if you don't trade him at this point, is he just going to leave when his contract is up and you get that 3rd-round comp pick? I mean, this could be a generational haul for the Cleveland Browns that really, Spencer, as you said, like this forces them to choose a direction, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world for an organization that's been in limbo about like, okay, we made the Deshaun Watson move. It was a huge failure on multiple fronts. Now we have to kind of pivot away, but how far do we pivot away?
I don't think it's about money. I think it's about the reckoning. I think it's about championships. And I think you really have to understand that football players almost play like dog years. It's not like in the NBA where you got LeBron James who's 40 years old. And then you have Michael Jordan who was like 38 and 39 years old, still playing at a very high level. Kevin Durant's like 35, 36 right now. And he's still a 25 point per game guy. Football players don't have that kind of time. They don't. And this won't be looked at as selfish, and this won't be looked at as running from the grind. What this will be looked at as is, we don't blame you, dog, because they have made a bunch of questionable decisions up there in Cleveland. So we do not blame you one bit. I wish they stopped blaming Kevin Durant, because that's kind of what he did too. He stayed in one place for 10 years, couldn't get over the hump, and he went somewhere where he could win. LeBron did the same thing after his first initial 5 years in Cleveland or whatever it was. He just joined a whole bunch of dudes, and they went somewhere and they won. So I get it. It's more acceptable in football because one person, especially a non-quarterback, doesn't have the same impact that a basketball player does. So I don't think Miles is going to be looked at and viewed as being greedy. I think he's just looked at and being viewed as a dude that wants to win a championship. He's already cemented himself going to Canton. That's not an issue. I don't mind guys being a little bit personal, especially when the personal thing that they're trying to obtain and they're chasing is a team goal. What's the best destination? I don't know. Squad guys going to talk about that too. Listen to this.
So what approach do you think the Cleveland Browns need to take when seeking out this trade, or that they're not apparently going to seek out, but they're going to seek out? And do you have a top team in mind that you think, if you're Myles Garrett and your goal is winning a championship, that you want to land on?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're about to watch a pair of them this weekend, right? I mean, if there's the opportunity to land on one of the two teams that's been in the Super Bowl at least twice in the last 3 years, then those are the ones that you're probably looking to prioritize. But there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to potentially find places to land on a contender. But we've seen this over and over again in the NFL as well. I mean, we watched Gerald McCoy leave and say he wanted to go to a contender, and he signed with the Carolina Panthers. Like, we see this kind of stuff all the time where people will say, oh, yeah, we want to go to a contender, we want to do this, and then they sign with some middling team somewhere, or they get traded to some middling team somewhere. So the biggest thing is going to be, if he ends up getting traded, Myles Garrett. Are the Cleveland Browns incentivized in any way to do him any favors in terms of saying, like, yeah, okay, you pushed yourself out. We're going to send you somewhere where you're going to be able to win. Do they really want to do that? Unless he has a no trade clause or anything, which Spencer would know. I don't know if he does.
He does not. No.
Yeah. So the team kind of has all the leverage here. And this is one of the reasons why we see a lot of trade requests never actually come to fruition.
I think Miles has a little bit of an issue here. Any team that's a contender is already, unless they can forecast some team, and we'll talk about that in the third segment, like a team that's not in the playoffs this year, that Myles Garrett may just be like the missing piece, or that he can project, okay, if I go there, I can actually help them get over the hump. There are a couple of teams like that. However, for them to maximize and get the most back, they're going to have to trade him to a team that's not very good. I would look at all of those teams that are in the top 6, top 7 of the draft, and that's probably where I would be going with this, because Cleveland does not, even though Chris Clark yesterday said with the Chiefs, he thinks that they're kind of obligated, like the code, because he's been such a good guy, to kind of send him where he wants. I saw the Jacksonville Jaguars do the exact same thing with Jalen Ramsey. Jalen gave him a list of teams. There were 5 contending teams, and they got the best deal from those teams, and then they worked with Jalen to get Jalen where he wanted to go. And people forget that they actually did that. And that's the thing that Shad Khan, he's always been a fair guy. Okay, I criticize him a lot. Not the last few weeks I haven't. But the thing about it is, that's just something that, you look at and you go, if Cleveland really wants to maximize things, they're not going to send him to a contender that's going to have them picking in the last, the 5, 6, 7, 8 picks of the draft. The happy medium here is if they find a team that's pretty close, like the 2 teams we're going to talk about in the third segment, that's pretty close, and he could be the difference to get them over the hump. Or if one of those teams that are a playoff team, do some research and find out if they actually own a pick that belongs to someone else, then maybe they can use that. But they're going to have to get a bounty man for him. They're going to have to get it. I mean, this is a once in a lifetime. This is like generational. You need a big haul for Myles Garrett, because if you don't, you ain't doing it right. All right, we're going to discuss that and more. Talk about the 2 teams I believe that have the best chance to turn their season around that did not make the playoffs. Basically, they're going to do what the Washington Commanders did, maybe not to that extent. We'll discuss that here in just a second on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. That's right. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. While live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, man, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Also, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by PrizePicks. The game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded. PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with 1 more correct pick, and you're cashing out. Man, I think Saquon Barkley is going to have a big game. And if he doesn't, they're going to keep trying, and all he needs is to break 1. Y'all know that. Check out the promos tab to tell any of the Super Bowl Sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If your tail or if you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Third and final segment here. Last Locked On NFL before the big Super Bowl 59 game that will happen this Sunday. My man Matt Williamson couldn't be with us today. Busy. Everybody's busy this time of year, dog. So here's what I need you to do. Tune in to Locked On NFL twice a day, man. Twice. Tyler rolling early in the morning. It's like a double shot of espresso. It'll pop you right upside your head and wake you up. And then come on in the barbershop with me, Tony Wiggins. And we just chill out, relax. We might lie a little bit every now and then, but it's all in good fun. All right, non-playoff teams who can flip it in 2025. Now, the Bengals almost made it. The Bengals actually did what they were supposed to do late, but they had a loss early in the year. I think it was against either the Patriots or the Raiders. And I said, that game's going to bite them in their butt. And that's exactly what happened. They needed a victory from the Chiefs to get into the playoffs. Kansas City, they rested their people, and Denver won. And then Denver made the playoffs, and then Denver got smoked by Buffalo. But the thing is I think the Chiefs wanted to lose anyway. I don't think the Chiefs wanted anything to do with Cincinnati because Cincinnati always kind of has their number. But Cincinnati has something else they have to deal with first. How do they balance paying both of their wide receivers, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, while they're also paying a whole bunch of money to Joe Burrow when they still need to improve their team? Listen to the guys, Jake and James from Locked On Bengals, as they discuss what Joe Burrow was saying on Radio Row.
Joe Burrow ran the gauntlet down at Radio Row in New Orleans and made his expectations for the Cincinnati Bengals front office this offseason crystal clear. A lot of the same questions and a lot of these stops, but interesting comments along the way that highlight a number of different angles that underline what Joe Burrow has been talking about now for a couple of months with this front office needing to keep its stars.
Yeah, let's be honest here. I think that it's very, very clear at this point that Joe Burrow has a plan, feels confident that the front office can keep these guys and plans to keep these guys. And by these guys, I mean T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, Jamar Chase, all long-term extensions of this offseason. And it feels like he's trying to make sure that they go through with it, that there are no snags, that there are no hangups, that nothing happens. And that might be a stretch for some, especially the national audience. I think the national audience, and obviously all of these are national interviews that he's doing, outside of maybe Kay Adams, expects T to play elsewhere. Doesn't expect the cheap Bengals to get it done. And Joe straight-faced, and it's straight-faced, oh yeah, we got to keep those guys, better keep those guys, all of those things. And then the quote that stood out the most to me is the first take quote. And it's not the discussion. We've known they've had discussions, but this specific nugget, we've had the discussions that the guys are going to get paid that need to get paid.
Well, there you go. They got to pay them. That's hard to do. I don't know too many teams that have max level wide receivers playing on the team at the same time, along with a max quarterback, especially when they have so many needs. But the Bengals are one of my teams. I don't think they can afford Myles Garrett, even though Myles Garrett does not have a big cap figure. That's one destination I believe that Cleveland will never do because, one, it's Cincinnati. Two, it's in the division. And three, I just don't think it's tangible, but those guys have something that they have to do. But I did want to mention the Bengals as one of those teams that I believe has a shot to turn this thing around and actually make a run in the playoffs next year. Like I said, they actually won enough games to get there this year. It's just that they were in a tiebreaker and they lost out to the Denver Broncos. Now, the other team, I'm going to go over to the NFC. That would be another team that needed some help going into the last week, and they didn't get it, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, I believe, have a lot to offer. This is a destination, I believe, for Myles Garrett. this is a place. But I also believe because they have finally turned the reins over to the young quarterback, Michael Penix, that everyone knows what to expect now. But there's some work to do. They got to be able to keep their longtime defensive tackle, Grady Jarrett, and keep that team together. So listen to my man Aaron Freeman for Locked On Falcons as he tells you what they have to do to keep Grady Jarrett.
And I still think Grady still has some juice as a pass rusher. He's not, one of the premier pass rushing D tackles like he was, 3-4 years ago. But I still think he's an above average starting caliber. I think he ranked like 60th percentile as an interior pass rusher this past year. Now, the issues are going to be both of these guys are on the wrong side of 30. Both of these guys have high cap hits in 2025. Grady Jarrett with $20 million. David Onyemata with $16 million. The Falcons could save $16 million against their salary cap by cutting Grady Jarrett. They could save $8 million against the salary cap by cutting David Onyemata. Again, I think cutting David Onyemata is kind of a no-brainer at this stage. But for me, I don't think Grady Jarrett is quite the no-brainer that maybe other people think it is. I think if Grady wants to keep playing in Atlanta, then you keep him and you find a way to restructure his contract.
Grady Jarrett is one of those dudes that, while to put it the way Onyemata can go, right? But Grady Jarrett, no disrespect, bro. Don't ever run up on me because I said it like that, but I'm just being serious. But Grady Jarrett was such a great player. I think he gets motivated if you stick Myles Garrett right next to him, right? I just think it's one of those things where you don't need him to be the Grady Jarrett of old. You just need him to still be very good. And veteran guys, especially a guy like him that didn't really get by on physical ability, he got by on work hard, on attitude, on technique, and and being a former player's son, he probably has a whole lot of stuff on the inside of him that was beat into him, not beat into him, but it was kind of pounded into him as he grew up because his dad, Jesse Tuggle, knew what time it was. So I do think he should stay. And I also think that it would be a nice destination. And the pick that they have is sitting right in a nice little spot. They could give away even more, and maybe even one of those young players they have, maybe one of those wide receivers, or maybe that tight end that they can get off of a little bit. And I think that this is a good spot that meets all the criteria, close enough to being a contender, and they're picking in a spot right now in the draft that isn't great, but it's not as bad as picking late in the season. And I think that's something that Cleveland will be attracted to. Now, those two teams, I think, have the best chance to flipping it and being playoff teams last year, because every year, half the teams that make the playoffs don't make it the following year. Now the game. I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Jalen Hurts played the best game I've ever seen him play in the Super Bowl. According to Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs, he actually outplayed Patrick Mahomes, and there was even some talk that he would be the MVP in a loss when they lost to Philadelphia a few years ago, and when they lost to Kansas City a few years ago. But this is all about Saquon Barkley. This is all about the Eagles defense. I just think if I had to choose an MVP right now, I think it's easy to go with Saquon. I'll go with Jalen Carter. I think Jalen Carter is going to give Patrick Mahomes fits. A lot of guys don't finish well when they get close to Mahomes. Jalen Carter is a finisher. All right, man, Locked On NFL. Make sure you tap in Monday. Tyler Rowland will be here in the morning. Ross Jackson will be here in the afternoon, as I'll be on a flight coming back from the nation's capital. So Ross will be with you. I'll see you back Tuesday, but make sure you tap into both of those shows. And good luck. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the commercials. Enjoy Kendrick Lamar at halftime. We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.